tell you that my husband and I have for years been attending to our health both through nutrition, getting our greens, and through good supplementation. For us, we pour money into health prevention because we don't want to have to pour it into health care. And that's how we came to RBC. RBC was a gift from God into our hands at a time when we needed something particular. My husband was just really not as vital as he needed to be. And I couldn't put my finger on how to help him. So I started to pray like I usually do. And Wanda told us about StemKine. And my husband started taking StemKine, and unlike, not typically, immediately he began to feel the difference. Now that's really not typical of supplements. StemKine is no exception. But when you really, really, really need something, your body responds very quickly if you give it what it needs. And I've heard Earl say many times that good health is dependent on putting in what the body needs to build and taking out the offenders. And that's really a good way to put it. Those are my words, not his, but that's the process, is give your body what it needs to build and quit offending it with what you put in it and with what you do with it and with what you do to it. So we started taking RBC StemKine, first of all. We started taking mycohydrin. It's a great alkalizer in itself. And I was taking it when I began to have this problem. That's not a bad note on mycohydrin. If I could take enough mycohydrin, I could still correct this issue with mycohydrin. It's just that apparently, unbeknownst to me, my acidification was very deep. And it began to show up. And the things that I had on hand, like mycohydrin and spirulina, which I also take and was taking daily. RBC has phyto greens. They are an excellent source of greens for those of you who don't love salad like I do, or green spinach in your smoothie, which I do. Then Phyto Plus is a really good product to be taking. We also were taking Diacin. For all my adult life, had to struggle fight against hypothyroid, and it's like I work on any product that helps bring that up, I try to take it. I started taking Vitalo for inflammation, and my husband was having trouble with sugar. He started taking Depsil, so we are taking and really appreciate RBC products. They're great. One thing we learned many years ago about supplementation is the rule of thumb is you get what you pay for. That's not always true. An aspirin is an aspirin is an aspirin, whether you buy Bayer or, should I say that wrong? Whether you buy Bayer or Excedrin, or it's the same. It doesn't matter whether you pay $2 for it or 50 cents for it, it's the same. That's not true with nutritional supplementation. Good supplements cost more to produce, just like good food costs you more than junk food. So it was no surprise to us. We plan it. It's a throwaway of money to us to take something so far. I'm still putting money up, but I'm not getting the benefit. So we want a really good product like RBC so that we can really get the benefit of that supplementation. So let me go back to my story of 4 months ago. I really had gotten to where I was not feeling well. Not at all. And it wasn't something like I have a sore throat, I know what to do with that, or I broke my hip, or my kidneys are a problem. It was nothing that specific. I just primarily was so tired. I began to be so tired. It was like I dragged myself through the day. And I'd wake up thinking, what do I have to do today? Oh, God, what do I have to get done today? And I didn't have any reserve anymore. It's like I was feeling like, frankly, I was feeling like an old woman. It was like, I don't have that reserve to, I don't know if you've ever felt that emptiness when you've been really ill, that there's no reserve there. I'm drawing on everything I've got already. And yet I wasn't really ill with symptoms I could put my finger on. And even normal housework was hard for me to do. Now, we have 4 dogs in our house. We have a daughter with 2, we have 2. And I'm kind of a clean freak. You would not know that today to be in my house, but I am. Ask my children. And one of my pet peeves is I don't want my house smelling like animals. So I vacuum probably 6 hours a week, just keeping dog hair up, so I take dog smell up. I couldn't vacuum 6 hours a week anymore. just running the vacuum was so taxing that, you know, the rest of the day I was probably going to do something sitting down. I didn't have the drive, the will to get up and do. And if I absolutely had to do it, mustering that will was so difficult. And those were all symptoms that said to me, alarm, danger, something really wrong here. I was agitated. I think I'm usually a pretty upbeat, happy person when I'm me. And I was agitated, a little sharp with everything I said. I didn't mean for it to come out sharp, but it was sharp and cutting. And I wasn't sleeping well. I was having very serious sleep problems. Wanda can attest to that. I just could not sleep. I wasn't worried. It wasn't about something in my life. It wasn't any physical thing I could put my finger on. I just wasn't sleeping well. I was beginning to get depressed, and I'm not a depressed person. And I had nothing to be depressed about, but it's like a cloud was coming over me. And I began to be worried, fretful, and I'm not typically a worried, fretful person. I have so many testimonies in my life of what God has done for me in major disasters and on a day-to-day basis that I'm usually walking pretty solid and content no matter what's going on. But all of these things I began to have headaches, debilitating headaches that would put me down sometimes for 2 or 3 days at a time. And my stomach began to feel very strange. And I've always said I have a cast iron stomach. Nothing bothers my stomach. People get the flu and they heave all over and I feel a little nauseous. You know, my stomach has never been my issue. Suddenly it was really bothering me. So these things weren't all happening at once, but when I looked back at what was going on, all of those things were going on. And the thing that triggered to me, I really need something here. God, I need to be healed here, was that fatigue. Because it was so deep. It was something deep within me that it's like I've used up what I've got. And so I did begin to pray. I asked God to heal me. That's always where I go first. It's just who I am. That's my first step. Ask God to heal me. And I did pray for healing, and I asked church friends to pray for me, and they did. But in about 2 months, although on each little thing, like the headache would go away, or my stomach would feel better, I still wasn't myself. And so I began to change my prayer. Lord, put something in my hands. And He's done this throughout my life. When my husband, I was afraid it was going to be a young widow, and I was about 40, he put colloidal minerals in our path, and he was a brand new man in a couple of weeks. And when I had an episode with my gut that really put me in bed for 3 months solid and put me down for 6, and I wasn't really well for a year, where we juiced. My husband saved my life juicing. Talk about those greens. I'm telling you, greens can save your life. It's true. He proved it. He made a gallon of fresh vegetable juice for me every day. And we lived in the country. That meant he had to go to the store 25-mile round trip almost daily because we couldn't hold all the veggies I needed for him to process. So we've done a lot of health things that have improved our health in crisis and that have sustained our health. Where for our age, among our peers, we're fairly exceptional in that among our friends, other than maybe Ed and Wanda, we don't know anyone who isn't on at least 2 prescription medications, and we bless God, we aren't. So we're not new to nutrition and its importance, and supplementation and its importance. But as I began to pray for, what do I do, put something in my hands, I remembered I had this book. And I had to get it ready for a presentation. So I reread the book from start to finish, and guess what? Right here was my answer. I had it before I knew I had a question or a need, and I failed to employ it right at first, and I'm sure the Lord was just laughing at me, saying, honey, it's right there. But finally I got on the stick and figured out, my answer is right here. And I want to tell you that to continue the supplementation, like I said, the RBC products we take, we love, they do something good for us, and we will continue that. But when I had a crisis, I needed something more. And I did pump spirulina till I could barely, when you're taking 10 at a time and you do that 6 times a day, that's a lot of spirulina to get down the gullet. And when you're pumping mycohydrin the same way, I just got pill fatigue, and I do that pretty readily anymore. So This is a powder, which the one I purchased is a powder. And it's put out by the author. It's one of his recommendations for severe acidification. So let's talk about what he does have to say, because this clearly defined what my problem was and exactly what I needed to feel better in this particular crisis. So why is an acid-alkali balance even important? I gave this presentation to my husband off my cards I'd made as I was going through this book last night, and I talked as fast as I could for an hour and barely got it all in, and I knew as I made the cards, this is way too much info. And I'm an info geek, the massage therapist and chiropractors, and they probably are interested in all that info. Get the book, it's a good read. The rest of you would just glaze over and your eyes would roll back in your head and you would miss everything I had to say or all the good that's here today because you'd get bored with it. So I brought it down to the pith of why is this important? And I gave you a handout. If you look at it, the first one there is called Conditions Related to Internal Acidification. And this is out of his book. This is by no means an exclusive list. There are far more conditions that are related to internal acidification. As you can see, all the systems not only can be, but are affected by acid in your tissues. And the very first one, primary symptom will be lack of energy, constant fatigue, loss of physical tone and muscle drive, decreasing activity, tires easily, difficulty recovering strength following physical or mental effort, a sensation of heaviness in the limbs. I did have that too. It was like I just could barely drag my body around. Frequent and sudden feelings of inability to cope. I was having that. I would walk through my house seeing the things that needed to be done and feel overwhelmed because I felt like I can't do this. And you know, there's some projects that do need doing, but they're not overwhelming. But it was overwhelming to me because within me, I didn't have the ability to cope anymore. And a sudden loss of energy when you consume acids. Unfortunately, I'm not weight loss specifically due to decalcification. Well, it's good because it is due to decalcification of your bones, but weight loss has always been troublesome for me. I was talking with Donna about her son, and between thyroid and acidification of the tissues, your body's going to deal with what's most important first. It has great protective mechanism. It's going to protect itself first. So you might want to lose weight and you might want to look better and feel better because you dropped those extra pounds. But if that's not primary to keeping your body alive and functioning, your body's not going to do that first. So you can review this list of the common internal acidification conditions. As I reviewed it, I realized, I have had these things simultaneously. Some of them, you won't have all of them. That would be very rare. But it would be common to have something out of most of the categories or have had them at some time. Sometimes they come successively. As acidification increases, you go from having joint pain to having rheumatism. And so I looked back and thought, honestly, acidification has been a problem for me all my life and I just didn't know it. I remember seeing, one of these was having tennis elbow. I had that in my elbow and in my knee in my 20s. And as a matter of fact, we were square dancing at the time and my knee got so painful we had to quit. I just couldn't square dance anymore. So when I look at this through those eyes, I realize, I've had a lot of this. Which means I do have some deep tissue buildup that does need to be taken care of, and that's what my body's telling me. De-acidify. So, let's go back to our question. If I can find the first sheet. Why is an acid-alkali balance important? These symptoms these conditions we've looked at here are not always caused solely by acids in the tissues. But when they are caused by acidification, the remedy is always the same. De-acidify. And it is a process that is not difficult to do. And if you're having an acid crisis, you will notice a difference immediately. Within 5 days, you will see a difference. in the signs and symptoms, the superficial symptoms that you've been having.